Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Van. Wait, can you hear me? Maybe not. Oh, he'll come back. Um,
I can hear you.
you can hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me come and say hi. Hi.
Uh,
All right, so we're down to the wire. This is the second to last class. For those of you who've been with us the entire time, thank you very much. Students, the requirements have been sent out over BSpace for the final paper. There are no more readings and no more reading responses for the rest of the semester, so you can focus your full attention on the readings, on the final paper. It's due the first day of finals week, right? So that's why we've given you a break with the readings. Go ahead and focus on that. So, the lecture tonight. I am very, very, very excited about this lecture tonight because one of the things we've been talking about this entire class is the food movement. And a lot of our speakers have addressed the movement, but some of our speakers have addressed key parts of the movement without making the direct connection. Van Jones is someone who's participated in a number of movements and organizations and can make the connection. So, one of the other things about the food movement is that a lot of the problems that we've seen emerge from farm worker rights to GMOs to Walmart and the way, well, Walmart, not a problem per se, but some of the unfair business practices that a lot of larger corporations do emerges from an economic system that is a bit off balance, as we've seen in the last few years, right? And there's this growing movement, the Occupy movement, that is trying to point out some of these inequalities. Who are the 99%? Who are the 1%? How did our economic system get that way? Rebuild the Dream is Van Jones's most recent organization. And Rebuild the Dream is really trying to focus on the concept of rebuilding the American dream. What did it take before for American capitalism to actually work? There were a few key things that were in place that actually made things a lot more equitable than they are now. It's not some distant, far-reaching thing that's amorphous and vague. There are specific things that we can do to make this system work better for us. And it's the things that are broken that are directly affecting not only the food movement, but the healthcare movement. Pretty much every other movement. The underlying economic issues are what affect it. So that's a lot of what this lecture is going to address tonight. What is the economic underpinning that's affecting our food system? How is the food system having to function within our larger economic and political systems? So to introduce Van Jones, Van Jones and Green for All was the reason why I moved to Oakland. Because as a graduate student at UCLA, I was looking for a way to do environmental justice that was really proactive. And I saw Green for All and green collar jobs as a way to actually do that. And so Green for All and working there is probably one of the most life-changing experiences I have ever had. And I am forever indebted to Van and his mentorship. Van Jones has also started other organizations, including the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights. And, Color of Change. That name almost escaped me. And Color of Change. And as I said, Rebuild the Dream is his most recent organization. He's also the author of a book, The Green Collar Economy, that I highly recommend. My 90-year-old grandfather read that book, completely understood it, and was a fan ever since. So it is accessible to everyone. So without further ado, Van Jones.
First of all, can you guys hear me? Does that mean yes or no? Like a clap or a twinkle or something? Okay, thank you. All right, for some reason I can't hear you guys very well, but I can see your twinkles. That's good. First of all, I appreciate Nikki's kind words. I did meet her when she was a student, and she was a superstar student. We were lucky to have her for the couple of years that we did while we were building Green for All. It's so interesting. It's a kind of a good place to start because when we first started talking about the need for what we call green jobs or green collar jobs, we were pretty proud of ourselves. We thought we had come up with a pretty good formula because we were in California. It was the mid 2000s, and they had just passed all these great laws and policies to make the solar industry stronger. And the solar entrepreneurs were there, and the consumers were there wanting to buy solar panels and put them up, and the demand was there, and the technology was there, but the workers weren't trained. And so people were literally waiting 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, check in hand for their solar panels to be put on their houses, but there were no workers. So we decided that we could take this work that most needed to be done, repowering California to use clean energy, and connect it to the people who most needed work, who were often low income, African American, Latino, Asian, and other folks who didn't have jobs. So we said we'll connect the people who need work to this work that needs to be done, and we'll fight pollution and poverty at the same time. That was a novel conception at the time. I wound up writing a book about it, going to the White House to work on the issue, and we said we were going to create millions of green jobs. Well, in fact, we did that. We created 2.4 million green jobs in the United States. The problem was, now, is that a big number? Well, there are 80,000 coal miners in America right now. They are America's heroes. They risk their lives to keep the lights cut on. There's only 80,000 of them. We have 2.4 million green workers. There are more people working right now in America's solar industry than there are in the coal mines, more working in the wind industry right now than America's coal mines. Huge achievement. Why aren't we celebrating? Well, I guess they used to keep the lights on. I don't know what happened there. Huge achievement to be able to pull that off. And yet, we are still about 18 to 20 million jobs short. We had promised about 3 to 4 million green jobs. We got more than halfway there. But the hole in the economy is so much bigger than that we wound up still, though we delivered on the green jobs promise, we still have a lot more repowering of America to do. But what we really got to do now is figure out how to repower and jumpstart America's economy. And that requires a political movement. And that is what your generation has contributed already this year, just in the past 9 weeks. The central question, not just about how we green the economy, but how we make the economy work again, how we make it just and inclusive, how we put some of those rungs back on the ladder of opportunity. The key core questions your generation is now stepping up and addressing. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about this movement that your generation has already pioneered, give some reflections on that. I want to talk about the relationship between jumpstarting this economy and fixing our food system and our energy system. And then I want to have a few closing comments about, I think, the moral challenge that your generation faces as you try to move forward to deal with some of these problems. So first of all, we are in a remarkable period. The Occupy Wall Street movement as sort of the dense core, the beating heart, and the broader 99% movement, which is probably about 20 million people, is only about 9 weeks old. And yet it has already changed the conversation in our country from more austerity, more pain, what else can Congress cut, what more misery can be heaped on the people, to what are we going to do about income inequality. Now, in 9 weeks, your generation was able to achieve that change in the national conversation. And you didn't just change the conversation, you're already now beginning to change some of the conditions. Look at the victories that have already been won by your generation in this struggle. Bank of America, probably one of the worst of the financial institutions in the world, was going to further its reputation for banksterism by ripping off everybody in America and making them pay $5 extra for their debit cards. They were backed down by the protests in the streets about Wall Street's behavior. So if you think about that, every American with a debit card, because after Bank of America pioneered it, every other bank was going to pile on. Every American with a debit card was going to have $60 a year siphoned out of their pockets. You do the math on that. That was going to be a tremendous transfer of wealth from middle, working class, and poor people to the financial elite. That was stopped in its tracks by this movement, number one. Number two, already this movement has been able to change the way that Congress is operating. Congress was on its way with this super committee for exchange for some tiny tax revenues, decimate Medicare, decimate Social Security, Medicaid. That's off the table. The super committee collapsed this week because Democrats were given a little bit more spine. Our sisters and brothers in the Republican Party already have a lot of spine on their issues. Suddenly now Democrats had as much spine. The two fought to a stalemate. The super committee is dead. There will be no massive cuts to Medicare and Social Security. This is in 10 weeks. You add to that the fact that the President of the United States has decided that he's not going to let this awful tar sands pipeline go, which isn't directly off of the Occupy momentum, but is a part of that whole uprising of young people with 350.org and other groups. And you're seeing a generation rising up, actually able to affect the way the private sector acts with Bank of America, the way Congress acts with the super committee, and the way the White House acts with the Keystone tar sands pipeline. This is a big deal. This is a very big deal. And I think you've got to take that very seriously, because the only analog you can find in American history to what you already achieved, you've got to go back to February 1st, 1960, when young people started sitting in at lunch counters, and within a few years had broken the back of Jim Crow segregation. That was an incredible achievement. We take it for granted on this side of history, but you got to remember, you had about 300 years of enslavement in the country, and then there was a civil war fought just to get us from enslavement to apartheid, just to get from enslavement to Jim Crow racist terror. You had to fight a civil war just to get there, and then 100 years of Jim Crow terror. Lynchings, etc., formal legal segregation imposed by racial terror. The back of that, almost 400 years of nonsense, a generation stood up and broke the back of that. Within 10 years, it was a different country. How did that happen? And what can you do as a generation going forward in light of that example, in light of what you've already achieved in the past 10 weeks? Well, it happened because in 1959, when the country looked kind of like Leave It to Beaver, I guess if you were on the white side of town, black side of town, probably not so good, but you had a kind of Leave It to Beaver ethic in the country. 1959. 1969, completely different country. Civil rights, anti-war, women's rights, flower powers, hippie. What happened? In that 10-year period, the baby boomers came of age. At that time, they were the biggest generation in American history. They were idealistic. They were numerically so large, they just upended the culture, ended a lot of racist and sexist practices that had been around for hundreds of years, and gave us the country we now think of as America. But that was a big generation of young people standing up. Your generation is bigger than the baby boomers. Nobody tells you that. As big as the baby boomers were, as important and epic as the 60s were, your generation is actually numerically bigger than the baby boomers. You are the biggest generation we've ever had. Not only are you the biggest generation now coming of age, you're the most diverse. You got every race, every gender, every sexuality, every faith, every kind of human is present in your generation of Americans. And you basically get along. You might fight and argue about certain things, but in general, it is a miracle in human history how well you get along. The level of diversity that you manage on a daily basis is without precedent in human history. So not only are you biggest quantitatively, you're the most diverse qualitatively. And you're the most ecologically savvy generation in the history of the country. And you have the most sort of communitarian outlook, your social values. So you know, as this big freight train called your generation comes through American culture, and you're the most technologically connected. You're basically born connected. And so between the technology, the size, the diversity, the values, you know this generation coming through was going to make tremendous changes in the culture. But then also, we've created an economy with no place for you. That no is an exaggeration, but many, many great folks like yourselves who go to great schools, who do all the right things, graduate every spring off a cliff into the worst economy since the Great Depression, and neither political party is saying anything about it. Some of you are coming, come home from wars. You got cousins coming home from wars into nothing, no jobs. The veterans in your generation, twice the unemployment rate, 17 suicide attempts every single day. 17 people in your peer group who were in Afghanistan and Iraq and had all the support in the world over there. As long as Halliburton could get a cut and the war profiteers could get a cut, all the support in the world over there. But we dump them off in the airport and with very little support. 17 of them try to kill themselves, one every 80 minutes. This is a national tragedy. And those who stayed in college often graduate with big loans, big debt, no jobs, praying to get an unpaid internship and sleep on the couch back at home. This generation, massive, connected, savvy, and hurting economically, has just taken history stage. That's what happened this semester. A chunk of you stood up in 2008 and you made history in the presidential election. A bunch of you sat down 2010 and made history the other direction. And now people are standing back up again. This creates a tremendous opportunity for the whole human family to get the United States economy not just working, but working in a green way. Not just putting people to work, but putting people to work in a way that will deal with both our food system and our fuel system, the two big systems that are dragging us toward disaster. How we do food, how we do energy, food and fuel. You have the opportunity to put your hands on the lever and pull those two systems back towards sanity, and in so doing, rescue America's economy and rescue the Earth's ecology. This is, no pressure. But there it is. How might you do that? Second part of this thing. Well, part of what has to happen is that there has to be a top-down change in the regulatory environment in which our green entrepreneurs do their work. In other words, you have entrepreneurs who want to do organic food in America. They want to do community gardening even in America and sell that produce. They want to be able to do urban farming and urban agriculture. I'm sure you talked about this stuff. There are so many rules and regulations, though, at the local level that make that difficult, and so much of the subsidies and supports from the federal government support the poison-based agriculture. I call it poison-based agriculture because obviously if it's a pesticide, you probably don't want to spend a lot of time around it. You got suicide, homicide, pesticide. That's probably not a good thing to put on your kids' food, but yet we do it every day. And the big agribusiness you guys have been studying, but that stuff isn't just the result of bad consumer choices or supermarket placement. Federal policy pushes and supports big agribusiness, poison-based agriculture, monocropping on a massive scale. And we've got to have a top-down change in policy on the food system So we have less poison intensive, less pollution intensive, less carbon intensive food, bringing the food closer to the plate and having federal policy support that. That is a job creator. If you have many, many more small local farms, not using big tractors, but using skilled people, traditional economics will say that's the wrong thing to do. You don't want, we'd rather have a capital intensive strategy rather than a labor intensive strategy to do your food production. But I think your generation will say, au contraire. Why should we give all the jobs to big machines when they only work by polluting the atmosphere and relying on poison and monocropping when we have a whole generation of people who don't have work? Let's begin to rely again on skilled labor and on permaculture and that kind of thing as a job generator, as an entrepreneurial set of entrepreneurial opportunities that would not line the pockets of big global corporations, but would keep wealth more local. You probably had these discussions, but that is only one part of the so-called green revolution. There's food, there's also fuel. See, the thing about the energy system that we have, it's based on death, for lack of a better term. The food system is based on poison, death, and the energy system is based on carbon intensive fuels, fossil fuels, also known as death. Why do you think they call it fossil fuels? Not because they're living, but because oil is a substance that's been dead for 60 million years. Coal has been dead for 300 million years. So to power our society, we literally drill holes in the ground and pull up death. And we burn all this dead stuff in our engines, in our power plants without ceremony. And then we're surprised when we, having taken death out of the ground and burned it, we get death in the lungs of our children with asthma, or death out in the ocean with big oil spills, or death from the skies with climate change. But the whole strategy is based on death and having our workers, our energy workers, have only one choice: to go risk their lives in the coal mines or risk their lives out in the oil platforms to keep powering us the same old way, drilling those holes to power us the same old way. What we would probably love to hear from your generation is say, hold on a second. We appreciate the energy workers for drilling those holes, but America's future is not down those holes. If you want to see the future, look up. Look at the sun, look at the wind, look at the Saudi Arabia of renewable energy that we have from solar power, wind power, advanced biofuels, energy efficiency, etc. Let's focus on living things, the living sun, the living wind, living advanced biocrops, bioenergy, algae, etc. Let's focus on that rather than focusing on death. Well, if you take those two systems, the food system and the fuel system, and you change the way we feed and power our bodies, that's the food revolution, and change the way we power our buildings and our machines, that's the energy revolution. You take those two revolutions, change the way we power our bodies with food, change the way we power our buildings and machines with energy, you can change the entire system to something that creates many more jobs, that keeps a lot of the wealth and entrepreneurship at the local level, that keeps us healthier, that makes us stronger, and you have a tremendous shift generationally in the kind of country that you live in. That is available, that is possible, that is not pie in the sky any more than passing the Civil Rights Act or having equal rights for women was pie in the sky in the 60s. Tough, but doable. Now, last thing, before we just open this thing up. Just because you're the biggest generation, just because you're the most technologically savvy, and just because in 9 weeks you've completely transformed the national conversation about the economy, is no reason to get so puffed up yet. You'll get there, but there's a tendency to be, hey, look, we're the greatest, whatever. Just a few words of caution here. First of all, it's a lot harder. It's a lot easier to change the conversation than to change the conditions under which people are suffering. It's tough to change the conversation. You were able to do that as a generation. Your peers were. Congratulations on that. However, changing the conditions is much harder. Changing the conditions means a long walk. It means being able to go beyond one spectacular tactic and begin to develop multiple tactics, finding ways for some of you to electionize this energy. You have a huge challenge now generationally, going from generating a lot of energy to actually building some power. Right now you got protest power, that's good, but political power, where you start unelecting people who are throwing your future in the garbage can, completely different set of challenges. You got to have multiple tactics to be able to do that, to be able to pass legislation that will lift your generation up rather than leave your generation out. This is an epic journey for you. You're just getting started, and you're going to be humbled by how tough it is to go from protest energy to political power. That's number one. Number two, as everybody's saying at this point, it was very brilliant at first not to have any demands, not to propose any solutions. At first, you could say very easily, this movement is not powerless enough to have demands. Powerful people don't have demands. If you walk up to a senator, you don't say, Senator, what are your demands? Senators don't have demands, they have goals. Bankers don't have demands, they have goals. Why? They have power. So at first, it made sense that this movement that was so powerful wouldn't have demands. It just should have goals to recreate some opportunity for people and put the financial elite in check. However, we're now at a place where you have the attention of the whole world, and people want to know, can you go from anger to answers? Can you go from pointing out the problem to pointing out some solutions, either for yourself in terms of student loan relief or something bigger? This is important for a movement, and it's going to be a challenging, I think, thing for you. Also, I think, and this is controversial, but I'll say it anyway, I think the politics of confrontation alone wind up being a dead end for most movements. You've got to be able to combine confrontation with aspiration. That's what made the civil rights movement so powerful. Confronting the segregationists, but also aspiring, as Dr. King said, being able to talk about the future that you want to see and being able to lay out the breadcrumbs between what you're confronting and the kind of society you want to live in. I think that you've got a huge opportunity here, especially if you grab onto this green stuff, the food revolution, the energy piece, where the future of our economy is going to be anyway. I think you've got a huge opportunity here to go from confrontation only to aspiration as well. A part of that will have to be growing from saying you're the 99% against the 1% to saying you're the 99% for the 100%. The reason I think that's important is because the 1% are not the enemy or the villain just because they're rich. Steve Jobs was rich. I don't think anybody was mad at him. I don't think Americans in general hate economic winners. We hate economic cheaters. The reason it's called Occupy Wall Street and not Occupy Silicon Valley, that's a subtle hint. Occupy Silicon Valley, we just hate you because you're rich. No, Occupy Wall Street, there's a sense that Wall Street is now infested with economic cheaters who rig the game for their own benefit and hurt the rest of us. But that's not just about material success. That's about moral failure. In other words, it's the 1% that only cares about the 1% and is hurting the rest of us that winds up being the villain. Well, when you reframe that and you say, I'm not just mad at if you want to buy a yacht, that's your business. The working class person who built that yacht will thank you. I may wish to spend on something else, but that's your business. You buy a yacht. But if you buy a congressperson, if you buy a governor, if you try to buy a presidency, then that's my business, that's our business, that's Americans' business, and I'm mad at you. But it's not just the material success, it's the material success plus the moral failure. If you leave yourself that out, then you get a chance to have a cross-class coalition. You actually want some wealthy people on your side. Some of you are going to become wealthy. some of you come from wealthy families. You're going to want a movement that is sophisticated enough to be able to ally with the Warren Buffetts and the others who actually agree with that movement more than they disagree with it. Now look, all of you guys don't like this Occupy movement, and a bunch of you probably are on the other side politically, that's fine. But as a generation, your big contribution so far has been through this process. That's why I'm talking to all of you as if you are on the same side. I'm sure that's not quite true. In conclusion, I will say this though. Take yourselves very seriously. This country is in a big mess. Globally, Asia's middle classes globally are getting bigger. That's a good thing, especially if they can grow on a green, sustainable basis. That's a great thing. They have literally tens of millions of people that need to come out of poverty. That's wonderful. The challenge is that while Asia's middle classes get bigger, the United States middle class is getting smaller. And you create a situation where you have a lot of volatility. If you wait for Washington, D.C. to fix it, if you wait to stand in a long line to eventually get a job, to eventually get a promotion, to eventually have some power, to eventually try to fix it, it won't be fixable. You'll be living in a nightmare scenario in your own country, economically and ecologically. Those of you who are going to lead your generation, whether on the left or the right, or in the middle, are going to be those who use your genius to begin to solve some of these economic problems right now with new companies, with new innovations, crowdsourcing, funding, pooling our pennies online so that we can actually begin to help bottom up economic drivers in tough communities and poor communities, rural communities, actually beginning to heal our economy using your genius from the bottom up, or fixing our politics and coming up with ways to further dramatize the need for the political elite to act differently. Left, right, center, or otherwise, it will be the entrepreneurs, it will be the most creative and the most courageous people in your generation who step forward. If you step forward to say you're the 99% against the 1%, I don't think you can win. I think you wind up dividing the country. I think you wind up alienating, isolating people that you need as your allies. But if you say you're the 99% for the 100%, and you want to get the best out of America's government, fight against the worst, but you insist on the best. You want to get the best out of America's business community, fight against the worst, but insist on the best. And you want to get the best out of your own generation, you will go down in history as a generation even more accomplished, more important, more impressive than the baby boomers or any generation in the last century. Thank you for your time.
Let's do some twinkle fingers too, so that he can really feel the love. There we go. That's really what we thought of your lecture, Van. So,
Thank you.
Students, pull out your clickers, please. Because something Van said actually struck me, and I forgot our clicker question today. But the question is, how many of you have participated in either Occupy Cal or Occupy Oakland? Occupy Cal for A, Occupy Oakland for B, C for I haven't participated. Oh, what about both? D for both. Look at that. That's a great thing to get back. What do we got, Alex? Okay. 40 of you students have participated in Occupy Cal. 4 for Oakland alone. 28 for nothing. 25 for both. So overwhelmingly, the majority of you have participated, which gives an answer to Van's question about where you are on the spectrum. But the question that I have is related to movements, because this class is really about movements and how they work. And one of the things that strikes me about Occupy Wall Street and about the main mission and message behind Rebuild the Dream is that if you have a message of economic growth, that is a unified and universal enough message to align movements across the board. So I think my question is, what do issue-specific movements, what are issue-specific movements' place within a universal message? How do you really work together across coalition? Do you abandon your issue and really try to work universally? Does the universal message more important than your issue message? What's the advice you would give, Van, on that, on how the food movement should work within a universal message?
Well, first of all, I applaud uh, those of you who had a chance to get involved. I'm sure the 28 who weren't involved in this have been involved in other things. But obviously, this is going to be something you wind up talking to your grandkids about. So I applaud you for being involved and being able to make your own opinion by getting down there and getting beat up or whatever have you. Um, uh, Here's what I think about Nikki's question. You have to have both. The problem has been for those of us who are progressive, so-called, liberal, so-called, and many of you are not, but just bear with me to talk to me. I'll tell from my point of view. The problem has been that we have worked on every issue under the sun except the economy centrally. Uh, we've worked on civil rights for African Americans, very important. We've worked on immigrant rights, very important. We've worked on women's rights. We've worked on lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender rights. We've worked on the environment. We've worked on a whole host of issues such that if you ask the average American, can you name a group that works on African American issues? The average person will say, yeah, the NAACP. Okay, you say, well, can you name a group that helps women? They'll say, yeah, NOW, Planned Parenthood. You say, well, can you name a group that helps on the environment? They'll say, yeah, Sierra Club or Greenpeace or what have you. You say, okay, what liberal group works on getting people jobs and fixing the economy, the number one issue on everybody's minds? Well, most people won't be able to tell you anything. They might say the labor unions, but most people can't join labor unions because they don't work in those trades that are still heavily unionized. So there's a big zero there. So whenever you have a big hole, a big vacuum, then that becomes where a lot of energy has to go to begin to fill in that vacuum. But you would be crazy to dismantle all the other stuff that's been built up over the past 30 to 50 years and then say, well, now the only thing that matters is getting that hole in the donut filled. No, you've got to be able to do both. Our friends on the right have been smart enough to focus on both. They have their single issue, cultural issues that they're committed to, and they also have a big message on the economy, which is to cut taxes and have small government and all that. They've been very good at promoting the idea that America should have a puny little government, and that's their main economic strategy. And so if you believe in puny little governments, then you have a place to go. But if you believe in having a government that is strong enough to be a partner to the people and solve problems, then you have to try to find a movement, and you haven't been able to find one. And so what we are trying to do is fill in some of that gap. Now, the Occupy Wall Street movement, which is the dense core and the spearhead for this much bigger 99% movement, have really changed that since there's nothing out there for those of us who have a different economic viewpoint, and other forces, including Rebuild the Dream. We lead a coalition of about 70 groups and have 500,000 members. We're all in every congressional district. We're only 4 months old. If you're interested, you can go to rebuildthedream.com and learn more. We also are coming in. We are much less allergic to electionizing some of this energy and running folks for office and unelecting people who've been hurting the 99% and passing legislation and doing all that kind of stuff. And so we're hoping to be able to play some of that role. But to answer your question, Nikki, I think that if you are, whatever your single issue is, you would be wise to build some connective tissue to the bigger movement, to kind of see yourself as a Lego trying to fit in with the other Legos, but I don't think we should start throwing the other Legos away. We need to be as sophisticated as our friends on the other side have been.
Thank you for that, Van. All right, question time. Student, first question. There are no, oh, there we go. One, come on.
I can't hear you.
I'll repeat the question whenever people ask.
Okay, sorry.
So Van, the question was, you mentioned that we can't afford to wait and stand in lines to get a job and wait for the promotion. We've got to do something now to really shift the conditions people are living under. And the question was, how can you do that nonviolently? What's your alternative to standing in line and waiting?
Well, it's good. Well, I think there are plenty of nonviolent options, and you know, uh, people can't eat an uppercut anyway. So I don't know what violent option there is for trying to feed people and house people and clothe people. So I think a couple things. You know, there is this incredible capacity that seems to be present in your generation for online technological solutions. I look at things like Kiva, Kickstarter, Airbnb, Zipcar, this whole tendency toward collaborative consumption, trying to figure out this kind of shareable economy. In fact, we're going to have a slogan next year called American Dream 2.0. It's shareable. The idea you're not going to be able to surf to economic prosperity anymore on your own individual credit card and think that's going to work out for you. That's going to be a disaster. But what you can do is be a nation of neighbors and begin to help each other to do more with less. We're experimenting with these things that we call resilience circles, where we get people in hard-hit neighborhoods together, and they all feel down, and they all feel depressed, and they feel like they don't have anything. And then you say, okay, let's list up all your needs, but also list up all your assets. And it turns out, well, this one lost her job, but she's got a car. But this one's car just got repossessed, but he's got a job. Well, they can then collaborate and help each other. And this one can borrow this one's car and give her a little bit of money. That helps. And it turns out, well, this one just lost her ability to afford childcare, but this one's got a niece that's unemployed. And then and it turns out, an hour later, everybody's happy. Now, nobody got a job, but they did a lot better with the resources that are available to them. And that can be done in a face-to-face way, high touch. It can also be done and supported online, high tech. But I think that your generation is going to have to almost pretend that the old economy doesn't exist and imagine, even if your income is going down, can your quality of life go up if you have an ethic of sharing and cooperating and using this sort of social orientation you already have and this technological orientation you already have to build new companies that work in new ways? Now, I can't figure that stuff out, but there's something out there. There's something out there, a future out there, where even while we're trying to get Washington, D.C. to act right and trying to get these big corporations to hire better and quit sitting on all their cash, that we can just start leaving the old economy behind. And some of you will find ways to do that. And you'll get a lot of esteem and acclaim, and some of you might get rich. But regardless, you will, part of what you want to do from a deeply ecological perspective is to begin to dematerialize and decarbonize the economy. In other words, let's use less crap and let's burn less dirty energy. And one way to use less crap is to not have this economy where everybody's got to go get a job so they can buy some more crap every day, every year, every month to feel good about themselves. But what we have is, look, we got plenty of stuff around here already. Let's start sharing it, repurposing it, bartering, trading, and having that be a way where we can have a high quality of life, uh, know our neighbors, or at least know people we can find online that we like, and not feel that just because we aren't adding to the big pile of garbage out behind our house, that somehow we aren't living the American dream. We got to have a new American dream, I think, that is dematerialized, decarbonized, less crap, more community.
Thank you, Van. Twinkle fingers, remember, twinkle fingers. Everybody loved that answer, Van. All right, another question. Yes. So the question was around what you talked about in terms of political power and how to get it. Considering the popularity of Citizens United and other things like it, what is the role of political action committees in actually influencing lobbyists to get political power?
Villainous, villainous, despicable. Is that what you mean? Like, what's the role? Uh, well, look, I spent a couple of years in D.C. I mean, the reality right now is, you might ask yourself, no, you won't ask yourself, when you go home for Thanksgiving, tomorrow, whenever you go, you're gonna have an uncle or an aunt or a cousin or an ex-boyfriend or somebody who's gonna say, what is all this protesting crap about? What is all this nonsense? And they're gonna point out that the young people in your generation who are protesting in the Middle East have a reason to protest because they have a dictatorship. But you have no reason to protest. It's a democracy. And I think that this is an important thing. I'm going to get to your question. This is an important thing for you guys to get clear about. You do have a form of democracy, but it is becoming more like a plutocracy. A plutocracy is not a democracy. Democracy is rule of, by, and for the people. A plutocracy is rule of, by, and for the rich. In our case, of, by, and for the corporations. And they have now, with Citizens United, been given permission by the highest court to just flood our system with cash. The reason Washington, D.C. is stuck on stupid and can't solve a single problem you have is because the floodgates have been opened up and your democracy is being drowned in corporate cash. And you got these big corporations, my experience was, just want to run roughshod over the American people, buy off America's government, take from America in terms of resources, in terms of prestige and standing, in terms of the internet, in terms of the workforce, but not give anything back in the terms of taxes, paying America back in the form of taxes, not paying America back in the form of wages, not paying America back in terms of respect. These are not American corporations anymore. They've become global corporations that use America, take from America, and never give anything back. Think about that. Does this sound familiar to you? It's take, never give anything back. Take, never give anything back. Corporate America would be the worst boyfriend ever. The worst boyfriend ever. That's how corporate America operates. And so we're saying to them, you guys got to give something back. You can't just take from America and not give anything back. And then they say, well, you guys are far out lefties. No, this is how America used to work. It used to be if you did well in America, you did well by America. You put something back in the kitty for the next generation. You recognize it's a lot easier to become a millionaire in the United States than become a millionaire in a country that doesn't have such a strong system in place. And that system, part of which is our government, has to be paid for. That's not some wild, crazy idea. That's how the American middle class was built. That's how where the American dream came from. That sense that you know when you win, when you go into business and you don't do well, you don't pay America back in the form of taxes because you're broke. You don't pay America back in the form of wages because you're broke. But when you do well, you pay America back. So I point that out because you have every right to protest as a generation because you're not only is the ecology being polluted by big corporations and by our own complicity, but our democracy is being polluted by big corporate cash and our own complicity. And so you are right to protest nonviolently, but you're right to protest and say, wait a minute, we want our democracy back, we want our environment back, we want our economy back. Where our dreams should count too, and our dreams may be different than the last generation's dreams, but they should have a shot as well. Now, that's all rhetoric, that's all abstract, that's all theory. How does this work in practice? Works in practice in the following way. Uh, you have to organize an awful lot of people to counteract all this money coming into the system. And under ordinary formulas, it's just not possible. What makes it possible is your generation. You guys know how to organize yourselves better, how to communicate better, how to sniff out the BS faster, how to go around the media filters quicker than any generation we've had before. Now, don't get too uppity because you don't know everything, but you do know how to do that. And that is a big deal. That is a game changer. And it gives the generations a basis now to interact with each other more equitably to figure out how we fix our democracy and heal our economy. What I see happening, or what could happen, is you could start putting out demands at the scale of the problem, calling for solutions at the scale of the problem. You have big problems. Citizens United, a court case that says our Constitution allows this madness, is a barrier to your future. No politician is going to say, let's amend the US Constitution to fix it. They're just going to stay inside of that prison and try to somehow survive and cut the best deal they can with the corporations and call themselves liberals. You don't have to do that. You might actually say, we are as a generation going to amend the Constitution to get rid of this nonsense. And since you don't know any better and you don't know how hard that is, you might actually do it. And 12 other things that other people don't think is possible. And so there's Citizens United. You might decide, well, look, these banks are so big and they've been declared too big to fail. So no matter how well your generation does, you can't succeed. No matter how many good grades you get, it's going to be hard. Some of you will do well, but it's going to be hard for your cousins to succeed. No matter how well you do, how hard you work, how much you play by the rules, it's going to be tougher and tougher every year for your generation to succeed under the present scenario. And these other people can't fail. No matter how bad these banks do, no matter how bad these CEOs do, they always are going to be all right. We've already said you're too big to fail. It's a license to be corrupt and reckless and greedy and crazy. Well, you might say, well, enough of that. Break up the banks. If you're too big to fail, you're too big to exist. You might come forward as a generation and say, look, we don't agree with that. Well, at some point, look at what's going on in Europe. The banks might have to come back to America's government and ask for another bailout. You as a generation might be able to impose better terms on. Look, I don't know what you guys are going to do. I'm throwing out ideas that are crazy because times are crazy, and you guys are big enough and crazy enough. I mean, anybody's going to sleep outside in tents and get pepper sprayed stuff. Y'all, we take you. Good job. We're not going to do that, but y'all might be able to figure something out here. And so I would say, shoot for what you actually want. Don't pre-compromise your dreams. Make the system tell you why you can't have a functioning democracy where people have rights and corporate money is used for corporate purposes, not for political purposes. Corporate money is great. I'm all for corporate money being used, but it should be used for corporate purposes, not for political purposes. Politics is about people. Democracy is sacred. People should be making these decisions, not corporations. Don't pre-compromise. Again, this is my opinion. You have a different one, but if I were in your situation, I wouldn't compromise on anything. I would say I want my democracy to work. If that means we got to amend the Constitution, break up these banks, whatever we got to do, I want a functioning democracy. I want an economy that works. I want an earth I can live on. And as long as you stay nonviolent, anything you do has a power to it, a magnetism to it. As long as you stay nonviolent, anything your opponent does to destroy you will just develop you. That's the thing about nonviolence. Anything your opponent does to you to destroy you, look at your fellow students who got pepper sprayed. All it did was develop more solidarity. The whole world stands with those students at UC Davis because it was so clear that that was ridiculous. If somebody had stood up and started punching the cop, it would have been confusing. And so you have to be willing to suffer a little bit in order to let the lesson be seen. But as long as you stay nonviolent, you can put up, I think you have a huge generation, you have huge dreams, huge goals, put up big demands, big goals, big solutions. Let the system tell you why you can't meet them. You've already beat Bank of America and put 60 bucks back in my pocket, so thank you. You've already got the super committee to back down and bow down and not hurt my mom's Social Security, so thank you. You've already stopped the tar sands project in its tracks so my kids can live on a planet where it's not being cooked, so thank you. And you're 9 weeks old. You're 9 weeks old. So don't stop now, you know, and don't assume that just because old folks like me couldn't figure out how to do it, you can't figure out how to do it.
There we go. That's an answer to a question. Villainous. They loved the answer to that question too, Twinkle Fingers. All right, few more questions here. Back there. So your question is about, and let me know if I didn't get this right, it's about entrepreneurship and the use of machinery and whether that can actually create enough jobs for your generation. Is that the question? Oh, got it. Okay, that's an interesting question. So the question actually is, Van, the green economy that you're talking about heavily relies on new technologies that are actually fairly automated. And so how can there be a jobs boom if most of the new technologies in the green economy are so automated that they don't create as many jobs?
Mm-hmm. Well, there are two ways to look at this. Um, the existing energy system and food system are even more capital intensive. I'll put it this way. Once you build a coal-fired power plant, there are not a lot of jobs associated with it. It takes a lot more skilled labor to put up solar panels and to manufacture wind turbines and put them up and repair them. But you're right that there's probably going to be a jobs gap for your generation. I thought, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that the job gap was going to be smaller than it actually is, and that the transition, the net increase in jobs transitioning from the dirty stuff that does rely on poison and machinery to something that relies more on renewable energy and skilled labor, that you could actually fill up that jobs gap just with green jobs. That was before 2008 when the whole economy collapsed and the job gap got this big. We can we can have a net increase in jobs if we use less poison and more wisdom, less dirty energy, more distributed systems, more renewables. But you won't fill up the whole. You won't be. So you're right and you're wrong. There is a net gain in jobs out of the energy and food sectors, but that net gain isn't enough to solve your problem. I don't know how you're going to solve the problem. You have a big challenge here. One thing you might want to consider is, are, are we aiming for jobs or livelihoods, right? You might have a scenario where uh, you change the metrics and the math on this thing, where you try to figure out, okay, look, let's break this down more simply. How much good food do we want each person to have in our neighborhood? How much recreation? How much? What are the goodies we're trying to get delivered to people? And then how much of that can we get delivered out of the existing economy? People getting jobs and doing that stuff and going to the old banks and that thing. How much of it are we going to have to come up with very creative solutions for, where we do our own community gardening, where we do our own, kind of people-powered finance, Kiva, Kickstarter projects, where we barter and trade? You may wind up building from the bottom up a supplemental economy, and just think that's normal, just called cooler ways to do stuff than going down to Walmart buying crap. But you're gonna, I don't see a scenario where we put things, I don't think we can fix this economy. I think the last economy, the economy that crashed right before you guys got to college, the 2008, 2009 economy, that economy, I think that thing's not coming back. It was based on consumption and not production. It was based on credit rather than smart savings and thrift and conservation like our grandparents. And it was based on ecological destruction rather than ecological restoration. In other words, I think that thing is gone, and it's probably a good thing. What you're going to wind up building is the reverse. We call it the green economy. Rather than focusing on consumption, you're going to focus on production. How can we make stuff? Small handicrafts, and as well as other do-it-yourself stuff, and building solar panels, building wind turbines. You got a mix there. But how you can go back to building rather than borrowing. So the last economy was consumption-based. You're going to be more production-based. The last economy was credit-based. You're going to be more thrift-based. The last economy was about burning the planet down and using up everything. You're going to be more about restoring ecological health. Production, thrift, ecological restoration. That is the green economy. I thought we were going to be able to get there usually using mostly top-down solutions from Washington, D.C. I thought when we had 60 votes in the Senate, Barack Obama in the House, Barack Obama in the White House, Pelosi running the House, that we were going to be able to put the rules in place at the top, that you would then be able to shift these systems from the top. We weren't able to do that. And so I think it puts you guys in a situation where you've got to think about it somewhat differently. You're not trying to fix the economy from the top. You're trying to heal the economy from the bottom. Healing is different than fixing. Healing means you want to support those things that are healthy. You want to nurture and give energy to those things that are healthy, help them to flourish. You want to knock out those cancers like Wall Street, those addictions like oil and coal as best you can, get them out of the way, and then let arise those things that are healthy. But it turns out we couldn't do it from DC. You're going to have to do it out of your generation.
Thank you, Van. All right. Oh, we've got more spirit fingers there. We have time for a few more questions, so let's ask 1 and 2, and I'll bunch them together. So, Van, I'm going to stack a couple of questions because there's still a lot of people that want to ask questions. So that question was from Ildiko. Actually, she's in the audience taking the class.
Hey, how are you?
Ildiko is in the line of Van assistants. We have a club. So that question was about growth, and because we live on a finite planet with finite resources, is the green economy going to be based on the same model of growth that the polluting economy was based on? And then the second question here is, oh. Van, they got you. The second question was, what WTF, the water bottle on the corner of your desk there? And why are you drinking out of that kind of bottle? He's writing it down. He's seriously going to answer that. I'm looking forward to it. Those are the 2 questions. Go for it.
Okay, good. Well, first of all, you definitely got me. And in fact, I told the guy, I said, "Can you bring me some water?" And he brought the water bottle. It's not my water bottle. It's the building's water bottle. But I should have. I don't know what I was supposed to do with it. But you're right. And you know what? This is the second time it's happened to me because I don't know. You guys, you saw my TED talk on plastic. Anybody seen that one? If you get bored, I did a TED talk on plastic, and they put it up online. And I didn't know it was online, because it's like a month later. And I go to the store, and I got my, the time 2-year-old and my 6-year-old, and we're trying to get out of the store. We had to buy some stuff, and I was totally not paying attention. I was dealing with the kids, and I walk out in the parking lot, and the young woman walks up to me, and she goes, "Are you Van Jones?" I said, "Yeah," and she goes, "I just saw your TED talk on plastic," and I'm literally like plastic bags, like looking like a bag lady. And anyway, so every time I touch plastic in public, I get busted. So it's the second time I got busted. But anyway, so good for you. But with regard to Ildiko, I try to fudge this answer by saying we need green growth. The reason I try to fudge it is because there's going to be a transition, no matter what we do, there's going to be a transition from this sort of high consumption, growth-based economy to something that works better and is more ecologically sound. I have a lot of friends who talk about zero growth economics, who talk about steady state economics, who point out you can't have infinite growth on a finite planet. I am not smart enough yet to be able to describe a political and viable pathway to that outcome. It has appeal to me. It makes sense to me. But that's not what I'm focused on. My suspicion is if we're still here 100 years from now, your generation will have reinvented economics to the point that it is dematerialized and decarbonized enough that it approximates what our steady state zero growth friends are talking about. But I don't understand the math yet. I haven't studied that part of the set of answers yet. But I never argue with the folks who point this out because I think that they're right conceptually. I just don't know how we get there practically.
Thank you, Van. All right, we'll take another couple of questions and maybe get out of here a little early. So 1 and 2. Actually, I'll take all 3 of them. Good job. Okay, we'll start over here.
That's a
Okay,
long
let
question.
me try to summarize that question there. Stop me if I don't get it right. I'm going to give you 3 questions, Van. So
Okay.
this first question is regarding congressional campaign financing. Okay, so, congressional campaign finance reform. This gentleman was referencing a body of literature that talks about how that that reform is absolutely essential considering the way that our political system works. And
Yeah.
it will take people power from the bottom to actually to get an amendment to the Constitution that can actually shift that. What is the question
Yeah.
in there? Oh, got it. Okay, so the question is the Occupy movement. That could be a serious consideration of theirs to try to get a constitutional amendment that actually addresses congressional campaign financing. Is that a good strategy? That's the question. Yes. Who is the second person? I can't remember. Go for it. Ooh. Ooh. Okay, so the question is, because there is so much attention focused on the economy, is that right? And the Occupy movement, we have a major opportunity with Farm Bill 2012, especially considering things like the fact that pizza is now vegetable because of the tomato sauce on the pizza. Things like that are starting to happen. Are we losing our food movement momentum to attack the Farm Bill the way we need to because we're now so focused on Occupy and the economy? So that's the second question. The third question was, there you go for it. Ha ha! So Van, the question was the 99% for the 100% movement probably needs a vocal leader. And can we nominate you? That was the third question. And those are your last questions for the night. So if you have any final thoughts as well, you can go for it.
Well, look, here's the thing. With regard to what Occupy does and what Occupy doesn't do, I can only say from my little vantage point some of the stuff that I think makes sense. But I trust the people who are actually occupying, which I'm not. No, my nice suit, my plastic water bottle, and no sleeping bags for me. So I trust the occupiers to figure out what that movement should do, and I think the rest of us need, as long as we can make pleas for nonviolence, need to support the creativity and the genius. So I don't know what that movement should do. I can only say that if it stays nonviolent, it will continue to have my support and support of a lot of folks. I think some big, audacious, hairy goal, as they call them, like amending the Constitution, would probably gather a tremendous amount of support really fast. People act like amending the Constitution isn't a realistic thing. We've amended that thing, more than 20 times, and some of them have happened in months. And so, depending on what this movement wants to do, probably the best thing that could be done for the democracy that we to save it might be that. But what people who may not focus on this may not know is that we've gone through hell and back to pass laws, normal laws, in Congress that presidents have signed, that the House has passed, the Senate has passed, and presidents of the United States have signed into law, that the Supreme Court now says don't matter for nothing, and that we're just, these corporations are essentially people, and they can do whatever they want to with their money. Well, I'll believe a corporation is a person when Texas executes one, but until that happens, they're not people. And they shouldn't be given the rights of people in our democracy. But the only recourse now is to amend the Constitution, which is the toughest lift in American politics. But if that were to happen, the Supreme Court would have to respect it. That'd be, pretty neat. Um, you know, I don't know with regard to the Farm Bill. You know, there was a you could have had a fear on the economy. I mean, on the environment, that this dynamic was going to get in the way of all environmental action, and yet people in your generation with 350.org found a way to bring a lot of that energy over to the tar sands fight. So, I don't think anything is inevitable. I mean, you can just easily say, look, the 1% wants to shove pizza down the throats of children and call it a vegetable. And boom, as soon as you say the 1%, everybody's like, hey, what? Let's go fight. So I don't know if you can't find a way to tie your narrative to this thing. I would be looking for those opportunities. Um,
Occupy
and then
grocery stores.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about this 1%, 99% occupied game is you can use it. It's open source. You can use it. One of the reasons I like talking about the American dream is, first of all, most people assume we say the American dream that we're talking about the American fantasy, which is everybody's going to be rich and you can just buy a bunch of stuff and be happy. You just get a big enough flat screen TV and cover up all the holes in your life, and everything's going to be great. That's the American fantasy, which has led to an American nightmare. The American dream originally, and what Dr. King said about his dream, he said, I have a dream. It's a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. He wasn't talking about consumerism. He wasn't talking about individualism. He was talking about living in a country where everybody's supposed to count, everybody's supposed to matter, and you shouldn't have to be born rich to be able to work hard and get somewhere and live in a good community. And so that part of the dream has been thrown in the garbage can so the richest people ever born don't have to pay more taxes, don't have to pay America back in a fair share of taxes. That's wrong. And so one reason to talk about bringing back the American dream, rebuilding it, reinventing it for a new century, but hanging on to that dream is because it is a bigger frame. Living healthy, having health care, having good food, all those things should be a part of any 21st century American dream. And so you might want to play with that as well. As far as leadership and spokespersons and all that, look, that there is no problem in America or on planet Earth that one leader is going to be able to solve, including all the problems in your generation's movement. We tried the leader-centric model of solving problems in the last century. We tried them 3 years ago with our beautiful president. But a leader-centric model means you're relying on an individual person. And as you already know, look at your ex. People let you down, right? Look at your ex who you used to think was great and now you can't even speak to anymore. And you don't even want to see him or her on your Facebook page. People let you down. So what we want to do is not have a leader-centric model and not have a leader-less model where everybody just runs around, nobody gets anything done. We want a leader-full model, where we all get to be leaders, where we all take responsibility, where we all bring our gifts forward. Now, I got a big mouth, I'm going to keep talking, but I'll be talking whether y'all were doing anything or not. I'm just talk and fight and do what I do. And that's how you guys should be. You don't need, in fact, you would be crippled if you had one person. All of a sudden, you guys are yelling at that one person. You're much better off with what you have. Just take a couple hundred of you and develop people who can talk to different parts of society, etc. Now, I do want to make just one concluding comment about America. You're such a global generation in your consciousness that sometimes I think you don't have the love of country or you don't express it. And I think that's a big missed opportunity for you. First of all, no one side of the political spectrum should own patriotism, love of country. you know, some people who are conservative will say, you know, we believe in American exceptionalism. We believe America is a great country. The left doesn't. The left just criticizes and just always has something negative to say about our country. And I think we should make sure they don't have a point. First of all, America is exceptional. Dr. King made America exceptional. The suffragettes made America exceptional, get the women the right to vote. The lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender movement made America exceptional. Stonewall made America exceptional. The labor unions made America exceptional. The environmentalists made America exceptional. America is exceptional. And in fact, what's so exceptional about America is that it was born with two contradictory aspects. You had the founding reality for America. And the founding reality was so unequal and disappointing that even the founders lamented. You go to Washington, D.C., go to the Jefferson Memorial, carved in marble in his memorial, I tremble for my country when I think that God is just. Talking about the enslavement, possibly talking about the decimation of Native Americans, possibly talking about any number of ways that the founding reality fell short. And yet, America is not just our founding reality. This is so important for you to remember. America is also our founding dream. And the founding dream is not ugly and unequal, it's beautiful and about equality. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all are created equal. What does that mean for your generation? What that means is to be an American is to be a part of this imperfect people who have been struggling to drag that unequal founding reality closer and closer to the beauty of the founding dream. That's what Americans are. That's who we are in the world. We're 5% of a big planet. But what makes us special? What makes us exceptional is that we are those people, that imperfect people, trying to drag that imperfect, ugly founding reality closer every generation to that beautiful founding dream. My generation, your generation, we cannot be the first generations to actually move in the other direction, to actually begin to move away from liberty and justice for all, to move away from America the beautiful, and not just singing about it, but actually getting out there and defending America's beauty from the clear cutters and the oil spillers and the mountaintop removers. We can't be the first generation to move in the opposite direction and abandon the principles of the Statue of Liberty. Give me your tired, give me your poor, give me your huddled masses who yearn to live free. You can't be a patriot, so salute the Statue of Liberty, and also be an anti-immigrant bigot. Those two things don't go together. We can't be the first generation to move away from those values that we've been fighting for now for more than 2 centuries to achieve here. And I think this movement that you're a part of will have even more power and even more resonance when you say the people out there getting pepper sprayed are not only fighting for the 99%, they're fighting for the best in America. The patriots are the ones who are out here who won't let our democracy be run over and taken over by global corporations. The patriots are the ones who are out here fighting to defend our democracy from the people who want to buy it and who want to sell out all our dreams, our hopes, and our principles. There is a power available to you in nonviolence. There's a power available to you in a positive patriotism. There's a power available to you in actually saying, we told you what the problems are, now listen to our solutions. If you do all those things, you can bend history in a new direction. You can bend history in a new direction. I hope you do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Van. And thank you. Oh, well, twinkle fingers. Twinkle fingers. He can't hear you. There you go. Thank you very much, Van. We really appreciate it. Thank you all. I'll see you next week for our final lecture.